Think about the last time you laughed, really laughed with a friend. Not your partner, not your kids, not a coworker mid-meeting, a friend. For a lot of us, that memory is older than we'd like to admit. And here's the strange part. It's not because your life is empty. Your life is full of people. There's the group chat, the work Slack, the neighbors, the in-laws, the parents that you nod at the drop-off, the 200 contacts in your phone. And still, if you get bad news at 9 o'clock tonight, how many people could you actually call? Not text, call, and know they'd pick up and know they'd get it. For a surprising number of thoughtful, successful adults, that number is smaller than they'd ever say out loud. Here's what I want to sit with today. Not how do I meet more people? You know how to meet people. The question is, when did having real friends get so hard? And why does a life this full of people still leave you feeling like almost no one truly knows you? Because I don't think that you got worse at friendship. I think that the ground underneath friendship shifted and nobody told us. And once you could see exactly how it shifted, you could start rebuilding on purpose something you probably assumed you just lost. Stay with me on this. So, friendship, specifically the quiet way it thins out in adult life. How could you be busy and surrounded and genuinely well liked and still somewhere underneath it a little lonely? If any part of the opening landed a bit too close, I promise you're in good company, myself included. This is one of the most common experiences of adult life, and it's one of the least talked about. We'll name why it happens, and it's more structural than personal. And then I'll give you a simple, honest framework for rebuilding without turning your friendships into one more thing to optimize. So let's get into it. Let's start by being precise because the fuzzy version of this feeling is part of what makes it so hard to fix. The problem usually isn't that you're alone. You might be around people constantly. The problem is a specific kind of thinness. Plenty of contact, very little of it that reaches you. Lots of people who'd recognize your name, few who'd notice if you went quiet for a month. We've all been there. Our calendar is full of social shaped activity. We've got work lunches, we've got kids' events, occasional dinner, we're rubbing elbows with people talking all day long. But ultimately, very little of it is actual friendship. It's really just logistics with a social coding, right? The who could I call at 2 a.m. test is really important. I don't want to be dramatic here, but as a thermometer, in reality, if something were to happen to you at 2 o'clock in the morning, are there a lot of people that you could call at that time? Is there anybody that you could call at that time that isn't already a family member? Because a lot of high functioning people go quiet when they run that test honestly. And I can tell you for me, I always felt like my social life was really full because I had kids in sports. So we had all these friendships with all of these people. And to be honest, after all of that ended and my kids got a little bit older, I've maintained very few of any of those friendships at all. I barely see any of those people anymore at all. And it's because it was a social construct. It was based on a schedule, logistics, and something that we had in common. So my life looked a lot fuller than it felt. And because of that, it becomes difficult when that changes. So I want you to feel relieved because this has a name and this is common, right? So many of us are in the same boat. So it isn't that you're uniquely bad at it or there's any kind of a problem with you. So here's a question for you. Picture your last genuinely unhurried, unguarded conversation with a friend. How long ago was it really? If you really stop and think. Because if you're feeling this, the first thing to know is that it's not a verdict on you. It's a verdict on the conditions. And I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. Here's the reassuring part. The part that I want you to actually take in, this is happening to a lot of people for reasons that have very little to do with your worth or your likability. In fact, the data on this is actually almost startling. And it's because the structures disappear. So researchers who study friendship point to a fairly consistent recipe for how it forms. Friendship tends to emerge when three conditions are present at the same time: repeated unplanned contact with the same people over time, a shared context that gives you common experience, an environment relaxed enough that people can drop the performance and actually be a little unguarded. Now look at where you spent your teens and 20s: school, college, early jobs, dorms, teams, shared houses, part time gigs. Those places handed you all three of those conditions for free. You saw the same people over and over without scheduling it. You were all going through the same thing. And there was time, unstructured, low stakes time where friendship could just happen in the gaps. Then adult life arrives and quietly removes all three. You know, when we stop seeing the same people just by accident every day, it requires a calendar invite. We get to a place where our schedules are busy, especially if we have a family and kids. There's a lot of scripted scheduled activity and not a lot of free time. So if we rely on serendipity to bring us together and continue those relationships, it's not likely going to happen. Geographic moves also scatter people. Maybe we had a lot of friends in college and they all went off other places. My older son went to college in Scotland. So by the time he came back here, he has some friends from back here, but he has friends all over the world. It's great when he's traveling, not so great when he's here. And, there's a cruel twist to all this because the friendships that you do have often depended on proximity, and proximity is exactly what adult life destroys. We go our own ways. The friend didn't betray you. You didn't betray the friend. The shared hallway just disappeared. I can count on both hands and probably both feet the number of friends that I have in that boat. It isn't that we're not close anymore, that we wouldn't be friends if we had the opportunity, but we just don't live close to each other. Two of my best friends in life, one has moved to Texas, one's in Oregon. I live in Connecticut. So geographically, it's really difficult. We don't get together very often. So it's a friendship recession, ultimately. And that's what people are looking at this as because it's been documented. It's a real measured trend. It's not just a vibe. And the fact is, it's something that's real and we need to come to terms with it. So this is a structural issue. It's not personal. And that's what's really important to know. If you're internalizing the fact that you're feeling like you're a bad friend or that nobody likes you because you don't have a lot of friends, the reality of it is probably something very different. It's that the scaffolding around you is what broke. So the thing that brought you together is not there anymore. So it requires concentrated effort. And even when the effort's there, sometimes the availability is not. So of your closest friendships, how many were built on a structure that no longer exists? A school, a job, a city that you left. I had lots of friends at all the jobs that I've had. Got along with them really well. Didn't have any falling out. We lost touch after we left because we didn't have that commonality anymore. And because it feels personal, we reach for personal fixes, which is where the standard advice quietly fails us because we start looking internally like it's something that we did wrong. Here's one number that makes the shift concrete. According to survey research from the Survey Center on American Life, the share of Americans who say they have no close friends at all has roughly quadrupled since 1990, up to about 1 in 8 adults. Among men, the change is even sharper. The share reporting at least 6 close friends fell from around 55% in 1990 to about 27%. So if you feel like your circle got smaller and quieter over the years, you're not imagining it, and you're very much not alone in it either. So what does mainstream advice tell you to do about this? Almost always it's some version of the same thing. Get out there more. Say yes to everything. Network, download the app, be more interesting, be more available and more fun to be around. More, more, more. And I want to gently push on that because I think it aims at the wrong target. That advice treats loneliness like a volume problem, as if the fix is simply more people, more events, more contact. But most of the people feeling this don't have a shortage of contact. They have a shortage of depth. And you can't solve a depth problem with more volume. You can go 12 networking events and come home lonelier than when you left. This is a really important distinction because being liked versus being known. Being liked is pretty easy. If you show up, you're pleasant, you're useful, you don't cause any problems, you don't create chaos. People can be really well liked that way, but also privately really lonely because they're not being honest or transparent, or at least they're not sharing all of who they are. Being known is different and it's a lot riskier because we have to be vulnerable to do that. It means that someone is going to see the uncurated parts. They aren't meeting our representative. They're really meeting us. And the uncertainty, the struggle, the stuff that doesn't make a good dinner party story is all what's in that bubble, right? So the uncomfortable truth is that most adult settings are optimized for being liked, not for being known. You go to a party, you have a couple of drinks, you talk to a few people, but there's not a lot of depth there in most cases. So we get more and more skilled at the thing that doesn't actually cure the loneliness. You know, I have no trouble whatsoever going to social events and coming across as very likable and people that really feel good about having interacted with me because I understand the dynamics of communication. I take an interest in what other people are talking about. I don't try to dominate the conversation. And based on all of those things, if you ask questions and things like that, it's pretty easy to be likable. You strike up conversations about things that are common and familiar and positive and happy, and that's not really that difficult a skill to cultivate. But I've been in a lot of these situations in years, periods of years in my life where I actually felt unknown. I felt like people met my representative and they didn't really meet me. I felt like nobody really knew me. And I felt like nobody really cared to know me because they didn't want to get to know me. They didn't want to ask me questions or talk to me on that level either. And so I think it's really important, put yourself out there more is not wrong exactly, right? So I don't want to criticize it specifically, but it's just answering a question that you're not really asking. If you just are starting for human contact, then that's a great answer. But how many people in your life like you? Now, how many people actually know you? Based on the criteria we just talked about, how likable are you in social situations? But how many people really know you? There's this old trope that you see all the time in these Hallmark movies and sappy romance movies where the couple that is ill fitted for each other, but they can't seem to realize it. They always end up in a situation where the friend who knows the person much better than their spouse or their significant other ends up knowing more about them. So they get in some social situation where some things about their childhood or some things about their biggest fears or interests or whatever come up. And the person who's supposed to love them and know them and be with them has no idea even who they are, to a ridiculous point of almost a caricature level. And the other person, who's the friend who is never seen as a romantic interest, knows them so well, knows everything, cares so much about who they are and what they want. And because of that, they end up getting together. Now, it's silly when it's played out on a screen in a romantic comedy or a Hallmark movie, but the reality of it is actually pretty salient because the fact of the matter is there are people that are very easy to know on a superficial level, but if you ever needed anything, they were not going to be there for you. And so that gap between liked and known is the whole game. It's the whole game. So let's talk about how you actually close it without turning your social life into another performance. Because here's the reframe this whole episode turns on. Friendship in adult life is not something you find, it's something you build. And things you build require a structure and a set of materials. Once you know what those are, this stops being a mystery about whether you're likable enough and starts being a design problem you can actually work with. So there's one more thing that I have to say before we get to the how, because it changes how seriously you'll take all this. We tend to file relationships under nice to have. The real substance of an adult life, we assume, is the work, the goals, the building, and friendship is the warm background that you'll enjoy once the important things are handled. The evidence, unfortunately, flatly disagrees with that hierarchy. The Harvard study of adult development has followed people for more than 80 years. One of the longest studies of human life ever run. It's tracked their careers, their health, their money, their happiness across entire lifetimes. And when the researchers looked for the single strongest predictor of who stayed happy and healthy into old age, it wasn't wealth, it wasn't career success, and it wasn't intelligence or fame. It was the quality of their relationships, not the quantity, the quality, the warm, close, dependable ones. And the flip side is just as stark. A large body of public health research, enough that the US Surgeon General issued a formal advisory on it, finds that chronic social disconnection carries a mortality risk on the order of smoking. So if we are feeling lonely, Feeling isolated, it's almost as bad for us health wise as smoking. The Surgeon General's 2023 advisory put the figure at up to 15 cigarettes a day as the equivalent. That's crazy. So, this isn't a be nicer to your friends talk, right? This is closer to connection is a health variable on the same shelf as sleep, movement, and what you eat. We focus on those things all the time, but we don't always focus on what that interpersonal element of it is, the richness that we get in our life. If we question it, all we have to do is think back to one of those moments, even if it was years back, where we had one of those good, genuine times. We let our guard down. We were real with somebody else. And instantly, it's not hard to put ourselves back in that emotional state and feel that same completeness, that wholeness, that satisfaction, that peace of mind, because that's what it does. See, connection isn't the decoration of a good life. It's one of its load-bearing walls. You wouldn't optimize the paint while you're ignoring a cracked support beam in your house. So, the quiet irony is that many of us pour real thought into the morning routine, the portfolio, the training plan, and almost none into the one variable that the evidence keeps pointing at. So, this isn't about adding pressure. It's not adding another to-do list. It's not another item for self-improvement, right? It's a re-ranking. It's an awareness. It's noticing that something that you've been treating as optional was actually foundational the whole time. Permission and seriousness at once. Permission to stop treating friendship as indulgent and seriousness about what it actually holds up. So if it matters this much and it's genuinely built rather than found, how do we build it? Here's the framework. I'm going to give you 3 ingredients, not a 5-step system, not a challenge, not a program, just 3 things that when they're present tend to grow friendship and when they're missing tend to starve it. Repetition, revelation, and reaching first. So let's take them one at a time. 1, repetition. Remember that friendship needs repeated unplanned contact. The things school and early jobs used to hand you for free. As an adult, you have to manufacture it on purpose. That means choosing something recurring, a standing time, a regular place, a group that meets whether or not it's convenient. The magic isn't in any single hangout. It's in the reliably repeating of one. And that is really the key. So this doesn't need to be something that we're doing 3 times a week. It doesn't need to be something that overcrowds our calendar. This can be very unintimidating. A monthly dinner with the same 4 people. A pickup league where you get together. I played in a pickup basketball league. We went out for pizza and beer after the games, win, lose, draw, whatever. And you spend time with those same people over and over again. What happens is, even if in the beginning it's a little stilted or it's a little superficial, it gets deeper over time as you get to know each other, because you don't need to go through the process of getting to know each other each time. Maybe it's a class that meets weekly, the gym at the same hour, a standing walk with a neighbor. The point is the recurrence, not the novelty. Scheduling 12 independent events, one-offs, is not as valuable. And so we aren't trying to schedule a friendship into existence. We're just rebuilding the conditions. We're rebuilding that scaffolding and putting ourselves repeatedly in front of the same humans so the friendship can form in the way that it always did, in the gaps, normally and naturally. So this is the difference between we should grab coffee sometime, which, if we're being honest, probably never happens, and the first Thursday, same place, standing invite, which quietly becomes a friendship in a year because you're seeing each other all the time. So what's one recurring container that you could either join or start, something that puts you near the same people again and again? 2, revelation. This is how you move from being liked to being known, and it's the ingredient most of us skip. It's a little scary. Revelation just means letting yourself be a little more seen than is strictly comfortable. Saying the true thing instead of the easy thing. Not a confession, not oversharing, not dumping all of our issues on somebody. Just in the moment, choosing the honest sentence over the smooth one. We know it, we've felt it. We could say one thing everyone's going to be okay with and they're going to move on. We could say one thing that might be like dropping a bomb and it might cause issues or people might be blown away. If that's the honest one, that's the right one. That's what deepens the relationship. So revelation is usually small. We're not talking about confessing our life sins. We're talking about, honestly, this year's been harder than I let on. Actually, I've been kind of lonely lately. That thing you said to me before really stuck with me. Tiny little doors, not the whole house. And the risk that you show something real and it's not met well is real. We're not going to sugarcoat it. So you take it gradually with people that you've shown, not promised, and you'll be able to see if they can hold it. If they can, then you can continue to open up. If they can't, then maybe you need to find other people. But the fact is, trust is built, it's not granted. So you need to put yourself out there a little bit and ask for that trust and let them earn it. And when that starts to happen, it's easier to be honest with somebody. It's easy to let your guard down. It's easier to form a natural, long-standing bond that's much deeper than superficial being liked. So it's the accumulated history of small, honest moments that landed. And that's the super important thing. Can't fast forward it. There's no way to shortcut this. So I know I've been in this situation a number of times, and I can tell you it's worked and it's not. I've had friends where I confided things in. I trusted them. I wasn't really sure. And it worked out. And they became really good friends, people I felt I could trust. No matter what, I could always go to them. I've had friends where it went the opposite way. The minute that they had something to use against me in a situation that would give them an advantage somewhere, they did. And I realized really quickly they aren't the people that I want to be connected with because I'm going to be exposed and I'm always at risk. So I'm never going to be able to let my guard down. And you'll be able to evaluate the same thing. You might take some bumps along the way because you might trust the wrong person, and that can happen. But that doesn't mean you give up on the whole thing. Just because you try something that doesn't work doesn't mean it doesn't work. It means that attempt didn't work. Try it again, try it with somebody else. So courage, size down. That's all it is, right? You don't have to be an open book. You just have to open one page. That's all we're talking about. And 3 is reaching first. Someone has to. In adult friendship, the person who reaches out first and reaches out again, even when the reply is slow, is doing the actual work of holding the thing together. It can feel exposing, like you care more than they do. Usually you don't. It just is what it is. Usually they're just as busy, just as unsure, just as quietly relieved that someone made the move. I'll be honest, I'm not often the person who reaches out first. I tell people all the time, oh, I'm not a great friend. It has nothing to do with my interest in being a good friend. It has nothing to do with my value that I put on them. It has 100% to do with my own personal schedule and how busy I am. And that's my own fault. And I recognize that. But it's not a judgment on them because I love to spend time with them. So we don't want to be talking about scorekeeping here, right? Stalled friendships aren't rejections. They're two people that are waiting for each other to go first. Someone has to break the standoff. So let it be you more often than feels fair. And you'll find that that will pay itself back in spades. And reaching out first is generosity, not neediness. That's an important distinction. You're not imposing. You're giving someone permission and an opportunity. If they don't want to do it, they don't want to do it. If they can't do it, they can't do it. But it's generosity. It doesn't mean that you need them. It means that you want to spend time with them. We need to, again, make sure that this is highly specific, not, hey, we should catch up. But this is, free Sunday at noon. Great, let's grab coffee instead of let's hang soon, because otherwise it's never going to happen. So here's a question for you. Who's one person you've been quietly waiting to hear from that you could just reach out to first today? Repetition, revelation, reaching first. Put them together and you basically rebuilt by hand the conditions that used to be automatic. Now let me make it small enough to actually start. I don't want to hand you a friendship improvement project because that would betray the whole point. The last thing your life needs is another optimization to fall behind on. So here's the smallest possible version, one experiment this week. Pick one person you genuinely like to be closer to, just one. Then do 2 small things. First, reach out first with an actual plan, not a we should. Second, when you're with them, trade one liked moment for one known moment. At some point, say the true thing instead of the easy thing. One honest sentence. That's the entire assignment. So this is a 10-minute act. It's not a lifestyle overhaul. And once you get used to it, you're testing this hypothesis. You're not fixing your whole social life by Friday. But once you test it and see that it works, you'll be in a situation where now you understand you have this simple method for being able to do this when you need to do it. And so it's important that you also don't feel as though you need to become best friends in a week. Just because you start getting together doesn't mean it's going to happen automatically and instantly. It does take time, but if you feel small shifts in the relationship as you go, that's the signal that you're on the right road. For some people, reaching first is going to be the biggest challenge. For some, it's going to be the revelation, and for some, it's going to be the repetition. Identify what that is for you and lean into it and make sure that you take the step to make it happen. Because if you're an introvert, we're not talking about being more extroverted. Depth is introvert friendly, right? One real conversation beats 10 shallow ones. So we're not talking about be the life of the party. We're talking about, even if crowds drain you, meeting with one or two people repetitively. So this is doable, and it starts today. Now, two honest objections, because I can hear them. The first is time. This all sounds nice, Brett, but I genuinely don't have the room. I understand. And hey, I gently point out that we tend to find time for what we've decided is load bearing. Your calendar is already a values document. It's just one that no one sat down and consciously wrote the values. Protecting one recurring connection is less a scheduling trick than a decision about what your weeks are actually for. So the fact is, with all of this, we just need to prioritize it in the same way that we are going to prioritize eating healthy, the same way we're going to prioritize our workout, because we know we need to work out more than once. We know we need to eat healthy more than once. We make those things a priority if they matter to us. And now we know that third piece of the puzzle is that human connection. There's a real difference between solitude and loneliness, and it's worth naming. Solitude is chosen. It's restorative, the quiet that you actively want, where you feel more like yourself and not less like yourself. Loneliness is the painful gap between the connection that you have and the connection you want. Learning to be genuinely comfortably alone is a good and worthy thing. No one says be with people all the time. And oddly, it's part of what makes real connection possible because it takes the desperation out of it. But comfort in solitude is not the same as resigning yourself to loneliness. One is a room you enjoy, the other is a door you've stopped trying to open. Be honest with yourself about which one that you're actually living in. So let's go back to where we started. That laugh with a friend, the real unguarded one, and the quiet realization that your life could be completely full of people and still a little short on the ones who truly know you. Here's what I hope you carry out of this. That thinning out you felt, it was never a verdict on you. It's what happens when the structures that used to make friendship automatic quietly disappear and nobody hands you new ones. But friendship was never really found. It was always built out of repetition, out of small acts of being known, out of somebody being willing to reach first. And any of those you could start rebuilding this week. So here's the one question I'll leave you holding. Not how do I meet more people? It's this: who already likes you that you could let actually know you? Start there, reach first, say the true thing. That's not a small life. That might be the whole point of one.